So it had to start here. If you go the way the world looks at things, they think it starts at another place, but it has to start here. It has to start with ashes. If you look at the way the world looks at things, it always ends in ashes. Starts with the fire and ends with ashes. But not when it comes to our lives of faith, and not certainly when it comes to the season of Lent. It's got to start with ashes. It starts with ashes because the ashes are our sinfulness, our brokenness, the dumb decisions we make, the inability we have to forgive. It has to start there. Because if it doesn't start there, there's no place to go. You see, unlike the way the world looks, if it starts with ashes, you and I proceed through Easter to the fire of Pentecost. And the fire of Pentecost is that emotion, is that equipping that happens to us that transforms us into people that we could never be by ourselves. But it will never get to that fire of Pentecost unless we start with the ashes of today. Now, there's just one problem with that. We don't like to look at our ashes. We like to look at other people's ashes, but we don't like to look at our own. There's something about us as human beings that we don't really want to kind of focus on our shortcomings, on our sinfulness. There's a lot that's been written in the last years about the fact that people don't believe in confession anymore. I think it has nothing to do with believing in confession and everything to do with the fact that we don't think we're very bad. We don't think that we're sinners. And so if I'm not a sinner, how many people have said to me, a lot of times they're older people, but it's not limited to that. They say, well, Father, I really don't do anything wrong. Really? Congratulations, Blessed Mother. It's not about the fact that we are not as bad as somebody else. We're usually pretty good about saying, well, at least I'm not like her. Or at least I don't pull the kind of stuff that he does. And so all of a sudden, everything gets kind of relative, and I'm okay. Well, the issue is, it's not that we're bad. We're not bad. We're sinners. There's a difference. We're human beings who have a propensity, an inclination all the time to do the selfish thing. That's sin. You see, if we don't start with ashes, if we don't start to look at those things within our own lives, then we forget what Christ came for. Do you remember why Christ came? To save sinners. It's the only reason he came. Andrew just didn't sing, "Be merciful, O Lord, because sometimes I'm not very nice." You didn't sing that, though, did you? You might have thought that, but you didn't sing it. Yeah. For we have sinned. We have sinned. And where our inability to look at that renders Jesus neutral. It makes his cross and death and passion absolutely worthless. And so we have to start with the ashes. We have to start to take a look at that, because then that frees us to then become the people that we never thought we could be. In some ways, it's like if you try out for a sport, or if you're trying to move up a chair in band or in choir, one of the things you need to do is you need to be really honest and take a look at the things that need to improve, the things that you're not very good at. And if you don't do that, you never get any better. You're never gonna progress. And so you say, hey man, I need to work at my free throws suck. Or I just can't play anything that's in the key of 4 flats. I got to work on that, okay? Those are weaknesses, those are shortcomings. Well, if that's true in just the regular way of the world, how much more is it true when it comes to our spiritual lives? That's why at the beginning of every Mass, we spend a few moments collecting ourselves and saying, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy, to remind ourselves about why we need to be here. I found it very well illustrated in a little story that I read some time ago, but it's always stuck with me. There was a group of people who wanted to go to a jewelry maker, and they wanted to see how silver was done. They wanted to watch somebody fashion jewelry out of silver. So they went to this place, and so there's this guy here, and he's got this chunk of silver, and he's starting to heat it up. And so they're all watching this guy very intently, and so he's working with it and raising the temperature and raising the temperature and raising the temperature. And he said, this is really delicate work. Because he says, if the temperature doesn't get hot enough, it doesn't burn the impurities out, and you'll never be able to get a good shine on it, a good finish on it. On the other hand, if it gets too hot, he said, you'll ruin the compound of the metal, and no longer can you fashion it. It can't be worked well enough. And so he's doing this all the while talking to these people, and he's working with this on the bench and working with this on the bench and working with this on the bench. And finally somebody said, well, how do you know when it's right? And he said, that's the easy part. It's when I can see my face in it. Now, what does that have to do with God? It's the same thing. Our impurities, our sinfulness, our brokenness, our pig-headedness needs to be purified, needs to be burned out, needs to be, in this Lenten season, we need some purification. Until what? Until God can see His face in us. That's why Lent's not a sad time. Lent's not a mopey time. It's a time when you and I can open ourselves to be transformed into something that we never thought we could. But we will never do it on our own. You and I live in a culture right now that kind of makes everybody kind of out to be, well, we can handle this myself, Well, if you can handle it yourself, then you don't need God. If you don't need God, then I think you're going to have a very interesting discussion with Him on the last day. And so it's about the purification happening in us that opens us up to possibilities that we could never do on our own. Some of you may remember, if you've ever listened to Handel's Messiah, but one of the songs in the Messiah that talks about the creation talks about the refiner's fire. The God is like the refiner's fire that burns out all the impurities in us and makes us the best version of ourselves. That's what the season of Lent is for. That's why this year we're using this idea about going beyond, okay? God always lovingly takes us where we're at. God always takes us where we're at. No matter what we've done, no matter what kind of trouble we've been in, no matter what kind of mistakes we make, God loves us enough to accept us right where we're at. However, He always calls us beyond. He always says, I got a little something for you to do here in your life. And so I want you to let go of the dumb stuff. I want you to let go of not forgiving yourself. I want you to let go of that, oh, well, I'm not very good at this. Somebody else can do that. I'm not very... He wants to transform us. And He wants to move us beyond the here and now. But Ash Wednesday and the ashes is the here and now. And if we never take a look at that, if we never accept that, if we never look at ourselves and say, well, yeah, that's me. I am kind of a lard head sometimes. If we never start in the here and now, we're never going to get beyond because we don't know where we are. And so the challenge for this Lent, with courage and humility, is to accept yourself, accept myself, where I am, warts and all. But then be willing to be transformed, to be purified, to go beyond where I'm at. I know of very few people that I've ever talked to who are honest, who are very satisfied with their spiritual life. Who said, I don't really need any more. I don't need God to tell me anything. I don't need any direction and guidance. I don't need to forgive anybody. I don't need anything forgiven in my sacramental life. I've never met anybody like that. That's why this annual season is a little snapshot of what we're called to do all the time. As God continually transforms us, no matter what our age is, a little bit better, a little bit brighter, until God sees his face in us, and other people can see God's face in ours. So in just a moment, we're going to come forward and receive this mark of our ashes. And it's just a reminder. It's a reminder that when you're lowered into that casket, lowered into that grave on the last day, we recommit this body to the earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust. We come full circle. And so this season, this day, calls us to say, what am I going to die to during this season so that God can take me beyond to where I never thought I could go? That's a choice, to be honest and to be open to who God might call you to become.